Horizon Zero Dawn. Released back in 2017, nearly 6 years ago, if you can believe that, as an exclusive for the PlayStation 4. In 2020, it became the first PS-exclusive AAA game to be officially ported to PC and released on Steam. Throughout its lifetime, many players found it captivating and expressed their love for it. Loved it so much for it to receive a sequel in 2022. So, how does the game hold up today? Is it as good as you remember? I have plenty of insights to share, including praise and criticism. Let's dive in. Probably the most prominent and striking aspects of Horizon are its beautifully crafted world and the compelling narrative that surrounds it. Humans coexist with enigmatic robotic creatures resembling real-world animals, while humans themselves seem to have lost all of their history and knowledge. In this world, you have tribal societies surviving by hunting massive robot beasts using bows and spears. And then there are mysterious ruins filled with advanced technology and holographic data logs, creating a fascinating blend of ancient and futuristic. The concept of this world is indeed remarkable. What exactly happened here and how did this unique situation come to be? Neither you nor the characters in the story have any clear answers. Instead, there are only legends.
When they rebelled and tried to murder All-Mother, her wrath leveled their cities, but could not cleanse their sin. Their ancient spite haunts those ruins, ready to ensnare anyone foolish enough to enter them.
Exploring this world was frankly fascinating. You get to wander among the ruins of the old cities, ancient facilities and laboratories, while learning about the people of the past. All this is done beautifully and immersive. But there is more than just history in this world. The present times and its inhabitants are also exceptionally well crafted. The various tribes, each with their own rules, traditions and histories. They are distinctly unique and you can easily distinguish Nora from Karja and Banuk from Oseram. Exploring their cultures and beliefs is a fantastic experience. Meridian, for example, feels massive, even though it's essentially a couple of houses. But within the game, it is a remarkable achievement of human engineering. As you delve deeper into the game, you gradually uncover mystery after mystery and make everything a bit more clear. You start to understand what caused the apocalypse that pushed humanity into a primitive era and the origin of the living machines.
What made her solution so terrible? What did she do to stop the robots?
And you become even more immersed, because this world's concept is truly one of a kind. It offers insights into human greed, militarism and the relentless pursuit of fame and power, all of which contribute to the apocalypse. It's a captivating idea and it's no wonder this game has gained such popularity. It's all incredibly fascinating and unlike any other game world I've encountered. Horizon Zero Dawn is a prime example of how to craft a world that's not just immersive, but also profoundly captivating. So the world is remarkable, and the concept is ingenious, but how does the game bring it all to life? How do the characters interact with this world? And what's the narrative surrounding this world building as it unfolds over time? The game kicks off on a strong note, I'd say. You begin as a child, which is a feature I particularly appreciate. I enjoy it when games use this hands-on approach for tutorials. It's not just you learning about the world, The character learns alongside you. But let's get back on track. You start as Aloy, an outcast orphan from the Nora tribe.
She's an outcast, to be shunned.
Raised by another outcast named Rost as his own. One day, Aloy falls down into the ruins of the Old Ones. Here she finds a weird device called Focus that is capable of displaying information and recordings through holograms. Here, the game allows you to explore this abandoned facility and listen to audio logs left behind by the people who once lived there. These logs reveal a tragic past. As these people faced impending doom, they made the brutal choice to commit a mass suicide right here in this facility. Some of them recorded their final thoughts in audio logs that you are now listening to.
And maybe that's all I need, you know? That moment the door opened and you were standing there wearing that retro wave dress and the way you smiled. I had to look away or you were gonna see on my face what had just blossomed inside me, you know? It was just an instant, but I knew we'd be forever.
It is quite an impactful way to begin a game. As Aloy matures into adulthood, she seeks to prove herself to her tribe, the Nora. To do so, she must win the Proving, a competition that could elevate her from an outcast to a respected Nora Brave, the title that is granted to the tribe's finest warriors who defend the sacred lands by fending off dangerous machines and hostile outsiders.
Then I'll do it. Whatever it takes. I'll win the Proving.
However, during the Proving, a mysterious group of cultists launches an attack on the tribe, resulting in the death of many tribesmen, including Aloy's adoptive parent, Rost, who sacrificed his life to protect hers. Following the tragic events, Aloy is taken to the All-Mother Mountain, the most sacred place for the Nora tribe, generally accessible only to the High Matriarchs. Here, Aloy discovers that the mountain itself has given birth to her, as she just appeared one day behind a massive sealed door.
The mountain is your mother.
What?
Aloy and one of the High Matriarchs believe that behind this enormous door, Aloy can find answers to the questions about her identity and origin. When Aloy tries to gain entry, the door system recognizes her, but declares that it's corrupted and cannot open.
Error. Alpha registry corrupted. Identity cannot be confirmed. Entry denied.
Aloy decides to embark on a mission to heal this corruption, hoping that once the door opens, she will uncover the long-awaited answers. This kickstarts a vast quest chain that takes Aloy beyond the borders of Nora lands and uncovers far more than just her own origin. Along this journey, she unravels the secrets of both the past and the present, seeking answers about the cultists, the enigmatic Old Ones, the cause of the apocalypse, and her own significance in all of that. Everything gets revealed one by one, and honestly, at some moments, it gets really deep. First, humans created a man-made apocalypse with self-replicating robots that decided to annihilate all life. And then they realize that there is no hope. These robots will lead to inevitable human extinction.
There will be no Earth left to reclaim. Just a lifeless, toxic rock with several million Pharaoh robots on it, hibernating, waiting for something to eat.
The writing explores how people grapple with this existential threat. It raises some tough questions. What sacrifices must humanity make to save itself? How many lives are worth giving up? When there is no hope for survival, what do you even say to people? Should you reveal the harsh truth or allow them to hold on to hope during their final days? It's a heavy and thought-provoking narrative.
This is the horrible truth behind the lies of Operation Enduring Victory. My lies. Lies designed to inspire millions of innocents to sacrifice themselves in battle.
As the world hurtled towards the inevitable apocalypse, humanity's last-ditch effort and hope rested on creating an AI with the capability to rebuild everything.
We call it Gaia. Mother Nature as an AI.
This AI would first attempt to eliminate the murderous robots and then work on terraforming Earth back into a habitable environment. The concept was that while humanity and its existing civilization couldn't be saved, they could be reborn by preserving all knowledge and history and rejuvenating the Earth.
We can't stop life from ending. But if you will help me, help Gaia, we can give it a future.
In the final months of humanity's existence, the brightest minds on Earth worked tirelessly to construct this AI. They developed the AI itself, along with several subordinate functions. One was responsible for preserving all historical knowledge, another focused on safeguarding human genetic material for future rebuilding. Yet another was tasked with creating robots to aid in terraforming the planet, and so on. There was also one function responsible for destroying everything and ending life on Earth in case something went wrong. In hindsight, this last function might not have been such a brilliant idea. Obviously, that's how everything got out of hand and why humanity's rebuilding efforts went awry. This evil AI that was created with the sole purpose of destroying everything alive decided to do its job and destroy everything alive. What a shocker! As you can probably tell, I'm not a fan of this revelation. It's difficult for me to believe that the best minds among the old ones, who successfully created all the other AIs and their functions, wouldn't have foreseen that constructing an AI with the power to destroy all life wasn't a wise decision, particularly when they themselves were living through an apocalypse initiated by murderous machines.
From which they will learn of us, our world, and most important, how not to repeat our mistakes. It's not an impossible dream.
And there are more issues with this story, like the fact that the main villain of the old ones, the person who plays a main role in causing the apocalypse and after whom it's named, never faces any consequences. That Pharaoh is just a villainous villain who is evil for the sake of being evil, and others do nothing about it. He is the one responsible for creating the murderous robots and continuing their development, disregarding the growing danger until it's too late. Yet he isn't held accountable, neither killed nor imprisoned. No, instead, he becomes one of the key figures working on Gaia in an effort to save the planet. Ultimately, it is revealed that he was in fact an evil villainous villain through to the end, as he betrays everyone and erases all of humanity's preserved history and knowledge.
I'm sorry. Really, I am. But sometimes, to protect innocence, innocents have to die.
Emergency alert. Venting atmosphere.
Yes, I hate him. Yes, I want to defeat him. But his character simply lacks depth. He ends up as a stereotypical, one-dimensional evil baddie, which is disappointing, especially in a world as complex as this one. Going further, the plot concerning the people of the current era didn't seem as captivating to me as the storyline about the old ones. I'm referring to the cultist activities and the intricacies between the various tribes. These stories aren't necessarily bad, but they don't match the depth and appeal of the main narrative about the Old Ones and the Apocalypse. Dealing with the politics and rivalries among the tribes feels like filler material between the main storyline. A significant portion of the mid-game is dedicated to efforts to save a war chief from the Karja tribe, followed by preventing a terrorist attack on their capital and an assassination attempt on the Karja king. It's not a bad story, but I was way more eager to understand why colossal dinosaur-like robots are roaming the world and what caused the apocalypse. Instead, I find myself entangled in local politics. This questline feels like a detour from the main narrative, and it pales in comparison in terms of scale and significance when contrasted with the quest to unveil the origins of all living things and saving the world. Horizon Zero Dawn is a tale of survival, unraveling the past and shaping the future within a meticulously crafted post-apocalyptic world. I found the story of this world captivating. It depicts people giving up on their world as it hurtles towards an inevitable apocalypse, holding on to the hope that one day everything can be rebuilt. However, while the concept of the story is incredibly intriguing and the world building is impressive, the execution of the plot falls short of what one might expect. It contains several odd plot choices, noticeable plot holes, and at times just weak writing. In the end, it is a decent plot that I enjoyed, but it feels like it had the potential for a lot more than just decent. Horizon is a game that revolves around humanity grappling with impending doom, the aftermath of an apocalypse, dealing with death, and holding on to hope for the future. So why and how is it sexist? I don't think it's a huge problem, but it is definitely something that I have noticed and want to talk about. For me, it is clear that one of the goals of this game was to incorporate elements of feminism into the story and create a strong female lead. This in itself is not a problem at all. I'm all for the inclusion of remarkable female characters. The Last of Us 2, for instance, is one of my all-time favorite games. Both Ellie and Abby are greatly written characters. So, what went wrong here? You see, every woman in the game is depicted as exceptional. They are kind, strong, intelligent, independent, and resourceful, capable of everything. So where's the problem? Well, the problem lies in the fact that when I say every woman, I mean precisely that. Every single one. There are just no negative female characters in the story. There is only one woman throughout the entire game whom I can't describe as outright positive. And she isn't portrayed as evil or a villain. She's simply unpleasant.
Answer!
I've done only what you asked.
To raise it, yes. We said nothing of love.
Enough!
Yet, even she eventually has a change of heart.
Aloy, forgive! Forgive!
In contrast, nearly every man in the game is portrayed as either just generally a bad person, exhibiting qualities like greed, bloodthirstiness, and wickedness, or men are depicted as unintelligent and inept, incapable of achieving anything without the assistance of women, particularly Aloy. Even when men are initially shown as well-intentioned and helpful, it typically leads to them using, betraying, or deceiving you.
An opportunity? That's what it was to you?
Yes.
I believe the writers miss the mark when it comes to the concept of a strong female character. Instead of creating well-rounded and complex female characters, with their unique strengths and flaws. It seems they lean towards an approach where all women are idolized as near-perfect figures. Obviously, this approach leaves all even slightly ambiguous roles to male characters. At times, this contrast becomes absurd. The main antagonist among the Old Ones, who instigated the apocalypse and abstracted efforts to preserve life, is a man, while the main character who opposed him and tried to save the Earth is a woman. In the current era, the primary cultist aiding the evil AI in its quest to destroy the world is a man, and the central character who challenges him is Aloy, a woman. Even the benevolent AI designed to save the world and rebuild everything is portrayed as a woman, while the malevolent AI aiming to eradicate all life is a man created by another man. There is nothing inherently wrong with the stories that follow this pattern, but it becomes problematic when it is every story, when every quest revolves around women stopping men and saving everyone. It can feel excessive. Another problem is that even this approach could have potentially worked if there was an explanation within the game's world for such a dynamic, such as a society where, for some reason, all men have become oppressive villains, forcing women to unite and rescue everyone. However, in this case, it is a typical society with no such background or any other explanation for this consistent gender dynamic. Not every male character in the game is portrayed as negative, yes, but even when portrayed positively, they still are pretty flawed. They make mistakes, they have questionable pasts, and they are ambiguous. One male character that stands out and is memorable in Horizon is Erend, but even he isn't established as an equal to Aloy. Quite the opposite, actually.
When we met, I thought I was a big shot talking to a pretty girl hidden away in the middle of nowhere. And now I see that I was just lucky to get a minute of your time. Try not to forget about me while you're out there changing the world.
He is depicted as a foolish, gullible drunkard who is reliant on her help.
So you're alive. We should celebrate. The drink's on me.
The main questline centered on Erend revolves around saving his sister, who is a more competent war chief than he is, as Erend struggles to fill her shoes, highlighting his inadequacy.
Now I'm supposed to fill her shoes. And instead here I am, stumbling around in them.
I think it is important to explain that I don't consider Aloy to be a bad character. She's actually quite remarkable. However, I believe she could be even better if the game didn't continuously emphasize her greatness by directly comparing her to male characters and highlighting how she excels in comparison to them.
So far, your theories are better than other people's facts.
Then the rest of my life will be lived in your debt.
I'll make sure it never happens again.
You are a wonder! Do you hear that often? I'll hazard a guess you do.
I've heard something like that once or twice.
Oh, she's modest now. A master of the arts of the old ones, a delver to shame the entire claim, and she wants to be modest. Ha!
This gendered approach is unnecessary. In conclusion, I would say that the game exhibits sexism towards both sexes. It suggests that strong and empowered female characters can only exist if they are portrayed as flawless and superior to men.
Give us a moment, Uthid. Girl talk.
Which is also unfair to men, portraying most of them as either immoral or incompetent. If you can create a strong female character without putting down men, that's just bad writing. In terms of gameplay, Horizon follows the popular open world formula, which is likely familiar to most players. You are placed in a vast open world with various activities to engage in, ranging from well-crafted side quests to mundane tasks like kill 10 enemies and collect 40 random collectibles. There are also challenges to complete, enemy bases to clear, and villages to stumble upon. Gameplay-wise, this open world is in the middle of the road for me. It's not exceptionally good, but it's not bad either. I found myself wanting to complete a lot of the content it offers. But there's also some incredibly monotonous and grindy stuff that's not very engaging. There isn't much to add, because if you played other open world games in the past 20 years, you'll find Horizon to be quite familiar. What I want to comment on is the presentation and immersion perspective. It is impressively beautiful. The dynamic weather and changing time of day contribute to the sense of a living, breathing world. You'll encounter random people going about their day on the road and near campfires, packs of machines and occasional wild animals. The ruins of old cities are scattered around, adding to the atmosphere. The different tribes have distinct architecture and culture that are easily discernible. The city of Meridian is particularly impressive. But despite this meticulous design and beauty of the world, there is a notable lack of reactivity to your actions. You can run around and push people, even shoot and throw grenades, without anyone reacting. There is a surprising absence of NPC responses to anything really. Even riding on machines, which for them should be a remarkable feat, goes unnoticed. This lack of in-game reactivity really detracts from the overall immersion. Horizon Zero Dawn, as a story-rich open-world game, features a substantial amount of dialogue. However, while a significant portion of the experience relies on dialogue, it is, well, not very well made. The character interactions, while not terrible, can feel stiff and unnatural, with characters often moving and behaving more like dolls than real people. The quality of the writing and voice acting is inconsistent. While some dialogues are engaging and enjoyable, most characters are just forgettable. Additionally, lip syncing is sometimes poorly synchronized, with characters' mouths not aligning with their speech, like at all.
And the Manuk would paint a mark on the sun's climb. Called to the machine spirits, I understand. They need no beckoning. Glinthawk's perched there.
And I'm not sure what is going on with their eyes. For some reason, they frantically move around during conversations, as if every single person in this game is having intense hallucinations while talking to you. I think they wanted to add some eye movement to make the characters feel more lifelike, which is a fine idea. But what the hell is this? Another thing about dialogues is that they have basically no reactivity. There is a choice system, but it usually only results in minor changes to a line or two of dialogue, while not changing the outcome at all. Which feels very odd, because sometimes there are moral dilemmas in the game. For example, you get hired to find a thief and return a valuable sword to its owner. Later you discover that the thieves are something like local Robin Hoods, stealing from the rich to help the poor.
We use the shards to make sure the poor in Shadowside get to eat, or bandage their wounds.
Yet you don't get to choose how to handle this situation. Aloy just decides on her own that she will help these people with their problems, and in return they will give back the valuable sword.
I'll consider it. But only if you return the sword to Ravon.
This decision is made without player input, leaving no room for players to express their preferred approach. This lack of meaningful choice can be frustrating in scenarios with moral ambiguity. The core gameplay outside of running around the open world revolves around a combination of stealth and combat. The stealth gameplay reminds me of The Last of Us 2, with elements like hiding in bushes, resource gathering, and crafting gear while stalking your enemies. It is all that, but considerably less exciting, challenging, impactful, and immersive. Of course, I know it's not entirely fair to compare these two games. I just couldn't help but notice the contrast. Stealth is just okay. It is there, and there is not much more to say about it. When it comes to facing machines, stealth takes a back seat. Instead, you utilize a variety of bows, traps, and other weapons from your kit. Each robot has its own set of weaknesses that you're expected to exploit. The game features a wide array of machine types, each with unique behavior, sound, and tactical approaches. It's a fresh and appealing concept, and the visual and sound design enhance the experience. Dismantling components from robots is genuinely enjoyable. It's simply fun to break off a robot's weaponry, pick it up, and turn it against them. The not so fun part of the gameplay is the difficulty. I appreciate a good challenge and enjoy playing games on higher difficulties, so I was excited about Horizon because I believed it had the potential for an excellent difficulty system. Picture this: the robots are genuinely terrifying, requiring you to evade them as much as possible. Strategically plan your attacks and carefully learn their strengths and weaknesses. Resources are scarce, so you have to think wisely about which weapon to use to avoid wasting anything. Each battle could be your last, but if you play smart, you can come out unscathed. A true survival experience in a post-apocalyptic world. Unfortunately, Horizon Zero Dawn is nothing like this. Instead, here's the gameplay on the highest difficulty. The difficulty merely increases enemy health and decreases your damage output. When it takes 4 headshots to kill a human, or 100 arrows to defeat a machine, it's not immersive or challenging, it's just tedious. I've made a genuine effort to play on a higher difficulty, but by the mid-game it became clear that what's happening on the screen isn't actually challenging. I didn't need to carefully consider my every move. Resources were in abundance, and enemies weren't intimidating, they were just frustrating. The whole experience felt tedious. This issue isn't unique to Horizon Zero Dawn. Many games seem to mistake difficulty with tediousness. I hope that developers will someday recognize that being unable to stealthily kill a regular human with the best available bow isn't true difficulty. Wasting 200 arrows in every fight isn't challenging. Reducing the effectiveness of a healing item, forcing you to grind more, is just a time-wasting inconvenience, not a genuine challenge. Until that day comes, I'll be playing games like Horizon Zero Dawn on lower difficulty setting, and I recommend that you do the same. Another issue with the gameplay loop is character progression. It just doesn't seem well thought out. There are two main ways in which your character becomes stronger. The first one is gaining experience, leveling up and using skill points to enhance your abilities. Pretty straightforward. The problem here lies in the skill tree itself, which leaves much to be desired. Some of the vital gameplay features are locked behind skill points. Basic abilities like silent takedowns, healing pet machines, and collecting items while mounted. These feel like things Aloy should be able to do from the start. Why should I have to spend 2 skill points just to shoot while standing on a rope? Moreover, many skills on the tree are just boring and do not impact the gameplay. Slight increase in inventory space, minor damage boost for specific attacks, and slightly reduced noise are hardly thrilling choices. These skills fail to introduce new mechanics or make Aloy noticeably more powerful. To be entirely fair, there are some interesting skills in the tree, like the ability for a triple shot, strike from below, or improved dodging. These are more like the kind of skills that I expect from systems like this. Unfortunately, they are in the minority. The second aspect of character progression in the game involves obtaining new equipment, primarily armor and weapons. However, I find that armor, for the most part, functions more as cosmetics with minor bonuses. For example, 15% resistance to elemental damage is something, but it's not a noticeable game changer, and it's definitely not something players actively strive for. The number of modification slots in armor is more important, but many armors of the same rarity level have the same number of slots, so there isn't much variation. Weapons follow a similar pattern. While many weapons have interesting concepts, the standard bow and its upgraded version are objectively the most effective weapon in the game. It offers speed, precision and good damage, making it the go-to choice. Other weapons often feel more like support options to the bow and have situational uses. For example, it is nice to have a better range with a sniper bow, but it is slow, resulting in lower DPS. Similarly, the elemental bow can apply elemental effects, but the arrows themselves do minimal damage, so it's often quicker and more efficient to use the standard bow. This pattern applies to most weapons in the game. One major issue with the weapon and armor progression, perhaps the most significant one, is that the progression itself is nearly non-existent. You obtain new armor and weapons simply by purchasing them from the in-game shops, rather than earning them through completing challenges or quests. In fact, some of the best equipment, including one of the top-tier bows and armor sets, becomes available to you when you first reach Karja territory, which is very early in the game. For me, it was around a quarter mark of the playthrough. As a result, for the remaining 3 quarters of the game, I didn't upgrade my main weapon even once, and only occasionally switched armor, mostly based on aesthetics. In other words, there's very little equipment progression in the game. The only exception is the Shield Weaver outfit, which you can obtain by collecting all the hidden power cells scattered around the world. It's a cool and powerful reward for players who enjoy finding hidden items. However, the last power cell can only be found in the penultimate mission, which essentially restricts this armor to the very final mission of the game, some post-game content, and maybe a DLC, making it somewhat less exciting. Horizon Zero Dawn is a huge game, and there were a lot of rather small issues that I wanted to discuss but didn't quite fit into other sections naturally. Some weird game design decision here, some technical problems there, and that's how this small problems section was created, where I'll address these minor concerns. First and foremost, let's talk about sound. I encountered some sound-related problems while playing the game. In fact, I had to use a different method to record gameplay altogether, because the game is this weird. But even with this workaround, there were still issues with the sound. Many of the fights, especially with larger robots, are incredibly loud. It's understandable that massive machines would be noisy, but they don't need to be this loud. Lowering the volume across the board isn't a solution at all, because out of combat everything becomes much quieter. Essentially, as soon as the game detects you're in combat, everything becomes significantly louder. Just compare how the sound of evading differs between combat and non-combat situations. I'm not exactly sure what's causing this issue, but it consistently pulled me out of the game, because I was actively thinking about how excessively loud everything is. This is a shame, because I've already mentioned that the sound design itself is fantastic. The menacing and aggressive sounds of a sawtooth, or the heavy footsteps of a long neck. Just beautiful. And this problem ruins all of that. Another, rather small but noticeable problem for me was the visual design. The visual design in Horizon Zero Dawn is, for the most part, stunning. It creates breathtaking scenes that can be truly mesmerizing. But at the same time, there are some minor issues scattered throughout the game that I consistently noticed during my playthrough. These include misaligned objects, overlapping textures, buggy lighting, and clipping geometry. While I don't typically pay much attention to such details, they were quite prominent in this game. As an example, at the beginning of the story, when you fall into a cave, you'll find yourself in a beautiful area, filled with water that reflects sunlight, creating caustics all around the cave. But then you turn around and see this. I think this white, shapeless blob is meant to represent sun rays. It's these types of small details that, while minor, become noticeable and slightly detract from the overall visual experience. Next is the weird loot box system. I am not sure why they did this and who thought it would be a great idea, but this game is full of loot boxes. In-game, non-microtransaction loot boxes. Every single trader sells them. Some specific traders barter them for valuables. You receive them as quest rewards, and you loot them from enemies. There are even traders specifically dedicated to these loot boxes. It is not really a problem, but why? Just why? The same question applies to the fast travel mechanic. In Horizon, fast travel requires a specific item in your inventory. These fast travel packs are easy and cheap to craft, readily available from every trader, and can be found all over the game world. Furthermore, early in the game, you can purchase the Golden Fast Travel Pack, which enables unlimited fast travel. The existence of this mechanic in the first place feels baffling to me. It's not a significant hindrance, as I never ran out of travel packs. and quickly just bought the unlimited one and forgot about the whole mechanic entirely. The underlying question for all of these minor issues is, why do they exist? Did no one in the entire gameplay development process ever question, why are we introducing a limit mechanic to fast travel that doesn't actually restrict anyone and adds nothing to the game? Not a single person? In the end, it's just puzzling how these aspects find their way into the final game. Initially, from this DLC, I expected the same Horizon, just more. The same weapons, enemies, quests and dialogue, but in a winter setting. To my surprise, it is more than that. The Frozen Wilds actually addressed and improved upon several aspects that I personally found lacking or problematic in the base game. The dialogues, for instance, have seen a significant upgrade. Characters in the DLC are more expressive and lively. They move around the scene, use their hands, and their faces convey more emotion.
How do I put it?
Women?
No. Independent.
The overall quality of the dialogue is noticeably better than in the main game. They even fixed the strange frantic eyes. Additionally, the characters introduced in the DLC are just well crafted. They have good writing, solid voice acting and compelling backstories.
Well, that's fantastic news. Marvelous even! You've got two hands, I've got two hands. Perfect! My savior, my salvation, and if you like, why wouldn't you? Of course you will. My accomplice.
I didn't come across any characters I disliked. At the end of the story, the dialogue with Cyan stood out as one of the highlights of the entire game. I can't quite put my finger on why, but I found it thoroughly enjoyable. Another significant improvement comes in the form of weapons. Upgrades to existing weapons are fantastic. They introduce a small change that transforms the gameplay and, in my opinion, makes it much more enjoyable. Now, if you charge up your shots, they deal significantly more damage. This introduces a reason to strategically charge your shots, aim at weak points, and use abilities like a triple shot, instead of mindlessly spamming arrows. It turns out that the gameplay is more engaging when there's a need to strategize, aim, and utilize abilities. My only gripe with the system is questioning why they didn't implement it this way from the start. The entirely new weapons are not as interesting, as they tend to follow the pattern from the main game of being situational and niche. They seem fun, but it's challenging to find use for them, especially when the main bow is now even stronger. The story of Frozen Wilds isn't particularly grandiose. Considering it's a DLC, it doesn't expand much on the overarching narrative of the apocalypse and the Old Ones. Instead, it focuses more on the Banuk tribe in the snowy mountains and their spiritual beliefs. Old Ones do play a role, as the story revolves around an out-of-control AI, but its impact on the main storyline of the series is minimal. In summary, Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds significantly improved major game mechanics, such as combat and dialogue, introduced a decent story and side quests, added a couple of new weapons to diversify the gameplay, and included a variety of new enemies to encounter. All around, it proves to be a worthwhile DLC. Horizon Zero Dawn is a good game, and I enjoyed playing it. I'm just not sure about the whole masterpiece label often attributed to it. The concept for the world is incredible, with solid world building, but other than that, it seems very flawed. The narrative, while interesting, doesn't quite reach its full potential. The characters, while diverse, lack the depth needed to make them truly memorable. Gameplay mechanics, particularly in character progression and certain design choices, could have been more polished. Given the amazing premise, Horizon Zero Dawn had the potential to be a masterpiece. Unfortunately, I don't think it is. In my view, it's a pretty solid, but middle-of-the-road open-world action-adventure. Looking ahead, I'm eager to see if the developers refine the game's mechanics, expand on its captivating world, and enhance the overall experience in the sequel, which I have yet to play. Thanks for sticking around for the whole video. I hope you enjoyed it. It took a lot of effort to create, so I would hugely appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe to the channel. For more content, check out my detailed comparison between Baldur's Gate 3 and Solasta here. Or take a deep dive into the Devil May Cry 5 retrospective right here. Wishing you a fantastic time and happy holidays. I look forward to having you in my next video.